7 for English language learners. My God.
Did you see special ed?
Yeah.
7?
Might as well take a 5
Break.
minute.
The board is going to take a 5-minute break to allow the boardroom to clear.
Well, the other day was really good. The people were overcoming garbage cans and stuff. I guess forget whatever night it was. The night they won the series. We gotta go back.
Folks, get out. Yeah,
time
just, yeah,
commitments.
yeah.
And,
And I'd love to share that with them because I hate it when they find that out.
yeah. He's,
Thursday. Anyway,
No,
it's
no, no,
like
no, no.
5:30. About 6:30.
Call this meeting back to order. We will move on with 11.3, approve the submission of a credential waiver application to the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing for 2 ROTC teachers. It's conference action item, 5-minute presentation, 5-minute discussion. Mr. Jesterna.
Good evening, President Rodriguez, members of the board, Superintendent Raymond. Item 11.3 is the submission for your approval for the application for waivers to the California Teaching Commission for 2 ROTC teachers and 2 career and technical preparation teachers. This is a conference and action item.
Thank you. Okay, so we will, no public comment. Thank you. We have a motion by Vice President Cunha to move from conference to action. Do I have a second? Second by Vice President Wu. And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions? The ayes have it. We are now in action. We have a motion by Vice President Cunha, supported by Member Terry, to approve the submission of a credential waiver application for 2 ROTC teachers. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions? And the ayes have it. We have an approval of the waiver.
Thank you.
Thank you. 11.4, Coherent Governance Operational Expectations 2, OE2, Emergency Superintendent Succession Monitoring Report. It's conference action item, 5-minute presentation, 5-minute discussion. Mr. Jonathan Raymond.
Thank you, President Rodriguez. I will, as we've done in the past, not read through the OE, but ask if there are any questions.
Is there public comment? Thank you. And I see no board member questions, comments, or anything like that. So I will take a motion to move from conference to action.
So moved.
Vice President Wu, supported by Member Kennedy. All in favor of moving? And opposed? Abstentions? We are now in action.
So moved.
So we have Vice President Wu and supported again by Member Kennedy. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? And abstentions? We have an approval. 11.5, Coherent Governance Operational Expectations 4, OE4, Personnel Administration Monitoring Report, Conference Action Item, 5-minute presentation, 5-minute discussion. Mr. Jonathan Raymond.
Thank you, President Rodriguez. Same. I will not go through and read OE4 again. This has come back. This is the second time coming back, so I'll open up for any questions.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank you publicly for getting that information to us. Superintendent Raymond, it was very much appreciated on the number of evaluations that were conducted during this monitoring report. Do we have any other questions by board members? Okay, seeing none, no public comment, I will take a motion to move from conference to action. Member Terry, and we have it supported by Vice President Wu. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Abstentions? Now we are in action.
So moved.
Thank you. I have Vice President Wu, supported by Member Bell. All in favor? Okay, and opposed? And abstentions. The ayes have it. We have an approval. 11.6, adoption of appointment or election process for replacing resigning board member. It is a conference action item, 5-minute presentation, 20-minute discussion. Mr. Jerry Behrens.
Thank you, Madam President. May it please the board. At the last board meeting on October 18, Board Member Bell announced her intention to submit a deferred resignation to the County Superintendent of Schools. She did so last week, I believe it was last Wednesday or Thursday. The deferred resignation takes effect on or about December 23rd, 2012, which means your last opportunity to make a choice on how to proceed would be at your last board meeting, no later than your last board meeting on December 20th. Under the code, you have essentially two choices to make. You can either, within a 60-day period, which began last week and will end on or about December 23rd, order an election, or you can make a provisional appointment. If you were to order an election, there is a minimum of a 130-day notice to the Elections Department. The earliest election date would be June 4, 2013, and the cost would range, and this is direct from the Elections Department, between $136,000 and approximately $273,000. If you choose that choice, then it's a simple action item to order an election. Your other choice is essentially to make a provisional appointment. And the provisional appointment would be made within the 60-day period that began last week. There is no statutory process on how to proceed. You do have a Board Bylaw 9223, and I'll quickly read it. It says, for provisional appointments, in order to draw from the largest possible number of candidates, the board shall advertise in the local media to solicit candidate applications or nominations. A committee consisting of less than a quorum of the board shall ensure that applicants are eligible for board membership and announce the names of the eligible candidates. The board shall interview the candidates at a public meeting, accept oral or written public input, and select a provisional appointee by majority vote. Essentially, the eligibility requirements are fairly minimal, specified in the Education Code. It's any person over the age of 18, a citizen of the state, a registered voter, and a resident of the school district, which in this case would be Trustee Area 1, and who is not otherwise disqualified according to the laws of the state of California. Essentially, disqualification would be a conviction of certain types of crimes. So the committee, under Board Bylaw 9223, appears to be essentially a minimal screening kind of a situation where you simply screen who the eligible candidates would be. The majority vote would only exclude Board Member Bell on the actual vote for a provisional appointee. Her deferred resignation means that she can participate in all other votes, all other discussions, except for the appointment of the provisional person, if that is the way you wish to proceed. You have overlying a GC5 board committee process, and in order to harmonize this prior board law with the GC5, GC5 states that you must, if you are going to appoint a committee, it has to be an ad hoc committee with certain specifications. Prepared for your direction, because this is a board decision, is some attachments for you to consider. One is a draft timeline for your discussion and direction, an ad hoc committee, if you wish to proceed that way, to qualify based on these minimal qualifications potential eligible candidates, a notice of intent in the local media. Attachment 4 is a notice to prospective applicants who may be interested. Attachment 5 is a proposed letter of application, and Attachment 6 are proposed questions which would be filled out in writing and submitted to your board. The board would actually conduct the interviews if that's the direction of the board. All of these proceedings are in open session. The ad hoc committee, if such is appointed, does not have to be subject to the Brown Act. That is my presentation, Madam President, so now it is up to you and the board.
Thank you, Council Behrens. I will now open it up to the public comment, and Mr. Gabros.
We have one public comment on this item from Richard Markison.
Good evening, board members and superintendent. As the Sacramento Bee pointed out this morning, this decision by board member trustee has definitely put the board in a bind. And although you have the option of calling for an election or making the appointment, obviously with the costs associated with an election and the timing, that's probably not a prudent decision for you to make. However, my suggestion to you is that in light of this board's commitment to an open process, that in addition to the board members that would be on the screening committee, and I recognize that it has been characterized as a ministerial action, that you would include at least one member from the public on the ad hoc committee to consider the qualifications for all of the applicants. This is probably somebody from District 1, a community member, possibly a former school district member, but someone who's recognized in the community in light of this desire for openness and transparency. The other thing that I would suggest that you do, because we are dealing with the holidays, possibly only one more board meeting before you make this decision, and the challenge of getting information out to the public about the applicants, that you post any and all applications on the board's website so that the public doesn't have to come down to the district offices to see the applications and the materials that the applicants would be submitting, but they are posted on the website so that anyone from either District 1 or throughout the district that has an interest in monitoring the process can do that with the smallest amount of discomfort. We wish you luck in making this decision and hope that you will in fact embrace the concept of transparency in the decision that you'll be making in the next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Cunha.
Well, for me, Emily, I would want to appoint, mostly for fiscal reasons. I believe expending the amount of money that we'd have to expend for a vote that would probably not have a high number of voters seems foolish at this point in time as we struggle with budgets. Mr. Markison's comment in regard to a public member is a fine one with me. I view that. I agree that we need an ad hoc committee. I think that it should be solely ministerial. I don't think it should have any. The only power to vet would be the basic requirements under the law. I believe that the discussion should be at the board level, and I look forward to the discussion at the board level. When I went through I thank legal counsel for the information, thank staff for the information as well. The only question I had for people here is that do we want to be more robust in the questions we pose to prospective board members? And if so, kind of what does that questionnaire look like and what kind of questions should be asked? So that would be just some of my opening comments.
Member Terry.
So in looking at this committee, and I'm not remembering what GC5 specifically says about this, I don't like the idea of a committee at all that's made up of board members. I think it could easily be handled at the staff level and then brought, and then we could be presented with a report of why folks didn't qualify or anything like that. I think from an openness standpoint, and I get the other commenters' comment about having a member of the public, but whenever there's too many hands in a process like this, I think there's the opportunity for politicizing these that kind of function, and that's going to have to be handled at the board level. Depending on the timeline, I may not be I may not even be voting on this, but I would definitely lean towards, or I support doing an appointment. I don't think, the precious amount of funds that we're getting from the state that we would spend, 150 to 200,000 on this type of election. And like you said, I think that the participation would be very low, and I think I would definitely want to appoint.
Member Bell.
Thank you. I think one of the things that I just wanted to weigh in and say that since there was a precedent set when Rob Fong, who's now a council member, resigned from the school board with a little over with 2 years left on his term, there wasn't a precedent set in terms of, it wasn't a committee, I don't believe, but it was an open process where resumes were submitted, and I believe questions were given, even writing samples were given, and it went to the staff. Then in a very public process, everybody who applied for the position and who met the qualifications was entitled to an interview of the full board openly and answered the very same questions. And it was a long process, but at least it did, it was out publicly, it was in the open, and it was a process where everybody could hear and see what questions were being asked. The board then went into deliberation, and on that very night then decided who the replacement would be. Now, whether or not that's the greatest idea, whether there should be a little bit, or how the deliberation, there should be a period of time to read things a little bit more in depth, or maybe that happens beforehand, but I do think it should all happen in the open. And there should be some form of a writing sample and questions that are laid out, that are the same for every person who is applying for the position. And then it is the entire board that does the interview publicly. And I think that as far as the resumes coming in, they should go to staff, not to any committee. Everybody who submits a resume should be given the very same chance. There shouldn't be any small covert committee deciding which resumes get picked. So if 20 people apply, we should listen to all 20 of them. And probably that won't be the case, but should that be the case? And they would need to publicly sit and answer questions, publicly submit something written answers to questions, everybody having the same, and submit their resume and CV. So I think that'd be a good process. The other thing is, and I think there'd been a lot of consideration on my point, from my point of view, realizing the timing, and people might say, oh well, there's an election in November. But my understanding from my discussion with legal counsel is that it would have cost this amount of money regardless at any time, because it was going to be a special election. My seat is not up, so it wouldn't have been a regular election anyway, and it's a 2-year, it would just filling out the remaining 2 years of my term. And then that person, whoever would come into my seat, would have the opportunity to run for a 4-year term. But it would have had to have been a special election anyway, because it is only it would have been a 2-year term. We couldn't have just opened it up and said, Area 1 now has an open 4-year seat, so it still would have been a special election. So regardless, I think appointment is the best way to do it. I think it's the most transparent, and I think it's the best way for the community to weigh in. That way anybody who's interested can apply, anybody who's interested can be publicly screened, and then that person has the opportunity to, in 2 years, run for the seat if they so desire and aren't running for the hills instead. But So that said, that's the way I would go, and I think it would also be it's just in the best interest to us all the way around. So, my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you. Member Kennedy.
Yeah, I agree that. I mean, I don't think that there can be much of an argument made for an election with the fiscal ramifications. So I think that's a no-brainer. This question about how the resumes and the applications are screened initially, whether it's at committee or staff, whatever way we go, I hope that the greater deference will be given to allowing as many to go forward as possible to get the full vetting of the board. I understand that there are certain statutory requirements that if they are not made, that they shouldn't go forward. But I'd almost like them to go forward with a recommendation from council that, based upon these criteria, this, in our opinion, is not a valid application or something like that. I'm in agreement with Member Terry in that I don't want this to be weeded out, before it gets to the full board for discussion. I also do agree, and you'll want to mark this down, Mr. Markison, date and time. I fully agree with you on that. We want to put this on the on the web and have all of these applications available for the public to review and look at. This has to have full transparency, and I think that's one way that we do that.
Vice President Wu.
I, too, am not in favor of having a special elections. I think that it would behoove us to make the announcement publicly that advertise on the website and the media inviting applications. I did have a question of Member Bell, and that question, Member Bell, is you mentioned writing sample. And when you refer to writing sample, did you mean to refer to a writing as being the responses to the questions that we were going to be asking, or did you have something else in mind?
Thank you, Vice President Wu. I think what the best, or what my suggestion would be to have maybe a series of 10 questions. And those 10 questions could deal with issues of the budget, school sites, the strategic plan, coherent governance, some of the basic things that board members need to know. I think they should be more on the level of governance more than getting down into any real detailed kind of question, and then probably some on maybe some on our social emotional learning, some on our that would be more student focused around what we want our results policies and what we want our students to achieve, so they could focus on those areas maybe of our coherence governance from our operations, and then our results, and then maybe also some on the budget, and just some basic questions, so that to me, the writing sample would do two things. It indicates a seriousness of the candidate to embrace the subject matter, and it also shows the ability to coherently put together thoughts into a structured manner that I think would be beneficial to the board. So by all of us being able to look at the writing sample, we have a good indication of who might be a good fit for the board, and be able to, we have difficult days ahead, as we have had in the past couple of years, and someone who can grapple with the subject matter and with some depth would be very important. So I would say, and it also definitely by submitting a writing sample, everybody having the same questions and submitting their CV or resume, it takes some thought, it takes some planning, so it's not going to be just someone who's not actually fully invested in being on the board, but somebody who would put some time and energy and thought into the process. So I think that would also indicate that by having to go through that exercise, There'll be people that choose not to apply. The people that choose to apply will be people that are very serious. So I think that could help. I think that could help us in the process moving forward.
Thank you. I do like the idea of asking, as Member Cuneo or Vice President Cuneo suggested, more robust questions and more robust questions on the topics of budget, school sites, coherent governance could truly reveal the nature of the thinking of the candidate, particularly when they're charged with responding in writing to the in their application information sheet. Maybe I should ask Superintendent Raymond if we were to add a few more robust questions to this application information sheet, which has 5 very general, basic questions. How much time would we need, and would that influence the schedule as suggested by Jerry?
I think the questions are important and really do determine that someone who's going to come on is understands the strategic direction that the district is moving in, and I think it can be accomplished in the time frame that council has established. And again, I think it also helps to give potential candidates an indication that there's expectations that come with wanting to take this responsibility on.
I remember I'm not doing it for the money, so. Is there a recommended means to, should we just solicit questions and hand them, forward them to you as more robust questions to be added to this application information sheet, or how would that work? So maybe by tomorrow?
Sure.
Well, that would be my recommendation anyway.
Member Kennedy.
I forgot to ask Mr. Behrens, as a process question, we're already getting contacted by people who are interested and so forth. What are the limitations as far as ex parte communication with board members with applicants? I'm sure that there's some kind of guidance you have for this.
Well, the only guidance that you are provided, as you know, is what constitutes a meeting when you're not in session, and that is a discussion that includes the majority of the board, which in this case would be 4. So we have to be very careful as to these ex parte contacts and communications that are no doubt will be made to board members. You might want to just refer, it's up to you, any such communications to a central point if you would like, but certainly you can't do the spoke of the wheel and get into that inadvertent area of a discussion occurring with the majority of you, because that would obviously compromise the process. So that's the only direction that the Brown Act gives you.
Thank you.
Okay, it's my turn to weigh in on this. Appoint, elect. I don't really care either way. It's going to be a process. Either way we do it. So I'm very open and flexible to that process. The only thing that I'm going to ask is that we do have this extremely transparent. And one of the things that I really liked about the process for the replacement of the board member in the West Sacramento, the Washington Unified School District, is that she honored and respected the request by her board to not talk to anyone who was interested in filling her position. Although it's not required by law, it was just one of those things that she felt she could do the board as a whole a favor by keeping herself out of the whole politics of it and letting people figure it out, whether they wanted to serve on the board in the capacity in her position that she was vacating or not. She didn't want to be biased toward any one way, direction, or another. And I thought that was pretty honorable of that board member to do so. So I don't know if Member Bell would consider doing something like that, but I think that would be an honorable thing to do and give everyone an equal chance who is interested in filling your vacancy.
Actually, I would disagree with you respectfully. I actually believe that anybody that contacts me, I would give them the same information.
Okay.
And I think that is that's what I would want someone to do for me, and so that's what I would do. So I don't have any intention of lobbying the board or anything like that, but anybody that calls me, I would give them information on the board and point them to resources. And I've already told people, like, oh yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So only out of a spirit of willingness to help, and I think whoever takes the seat needs as much information as possible, and I'd be willing to tell them at least my experience. And since I'm the person who's been on the board the longest, I sort of have a wealth of experience that has spanned at least a few different superintendents and a few different periods of time in our district. So, no, I would actually want to give people information. So now I've said that publicly, people will contact me, and that's just fine.
Thank you. The other thing about the ad hoc committee, I am willing to, as the board president, as I should, be prepared to put a committee together of 2 board members, let's say, whoever's interested in it, but to remove any possibility of any type of screening that could be subjective. I would recommend that we only do the 5 basic elements that are outlined in the application, that ad hoc committee be charged with, and that would be determining whether the applicant is of 18 years of age, they're a citizen of the state, they're a resident in trustee area 1, they are a registered voter, and they are not legally disqualified from holding civil office. And so that would just remove all of that other stuff from there. With respect to the questions, being respectful toward the person who developed the questions. I think there's some redundancy in these questions that are being asked and this the way it's been prepared. I do agree, and I really do like some of the suggestions that Member Bell has made in terms of asking questions regarding the budget, the strategic plan, and the school site plans. You named off so many things, Member Bell. I just can't. I couldn't keep up with writing on those, but those were the 3 main points. In terms of writing sample, I want to stay away from that type of language because this is not a job application. If I'm wearing my HR hat, I would be looking at resumes and reading writing samples, supplemental questionnaires and whatnot, and screening out using the screening criteria from there. But this is a board position. It is a volunteer position, basically, in the community. And one runs for these positions, and they don't need to have writing samples. They don't need to be coherent or anything of the such. They just need to be brave enough to put their name out there to run for a position and be elected in a democratic process. So I do feel, however, for us as a board to make a decision, we need to have some more qualifications from these applicants that are applying to be appointed. And therefore, I agree with beefing up our questions some more. With the exception of, could you please divert them to both the superintendent and the board president so that I understand and know that every board member has had an opportunity to submit their questions for the application period, and then if I don't see a board member that has submitted them, then I could call them and ask them if they really intended to not submit a question for review and consideration. or was this an oversight on their behalf? So I see more lights that lit up, and I see member Terry as number 1.
Well, and I think we need to have a little bit more discussion or a specific motion here, but I'm hearing you offering up to create a committee when some of us said that we didn't want one. And while I can appreciate the guidance that you just gave around the parameters of the committee, as a board member that has seen the committee structure move beyond their parameters in past things, that's specifically why I would agree with Member Kennedy that council could vet them and bring us a report of who didn't qualify and why they didn't, and have that to the entire board, so that there aren't specific members of the board that have more information on the vetting process than others. And the other, and I would also argue that sending this information directly to the superintendent and not CCing the board president, considering, again, while I appreciate your offer to want to include everybody in this, by the time this vote happens, there'll be another vote for a new president. I will not be a part of that vote, but in this timeline, the entire process is going to change. So putting in place somehow that the board president is overseeing the process of this, I think, is misguided in the way that we're approaching it. So I think the superintendent can take the additional questions, put together the questionnaire, and get it out. Because honestly, we need to move on to stay on this timeline. We would need to get this out really by tomorrow at the latest, and have it on the website, and have folks start submitting their information as quickly as possible. I do agree with you, though, that I don't like the wording of anyone saying writing sample. To me, writing sample is submit to me the press release you wrote back, when you're in college or whatever else. Turning in statements of purpose or whatever, visions, whatever, answering these questions, that's fine. Resume, bios, whatever, that's fine. Saying writing sample somehow is like proving to me that you know how to write, and that's and I don't think that's what you meant, but that's what I hear when I hear writing sample. Yeah, well, to me, we're not judging these candidates based on their writing ability. We're basing it on what they're saying and what they're going to do as a board, as a board member. So, while in certain job categories your writing ability is very important, I think here it's about how you're going to be representing your neighborhood and how you're going to be aligned with the visions of the school district. And I would also say that to in any way suggest that a board member shouldn't be involved in answering questions about their own trustee area is, in my opinion, misguided, because who else would have the best understanding about representing a specific trustee area or constituents or the underlying issues of their neighborhood than the incumbent or the sitting board member. So, just like there are folks running to replace me in my seat, and I've met with all of them and discussed my thoughts and the inner workings of my neighborhoods as best as I can.
Vice President Cunha.
I just wanted to come back around to the committee piece or the staff piece. I'm actually in favor of an ad hoc committee, but with the proviso that Member Kennedy had, that every single name comes to our board so that we know, the vetting is going to be just on the statutory issues, but I think that, let me take a step back. This is going to be a very political process, and I actually think we should own the whole thing, and we should own it transparently. And so that starts with an ad hoc committee that looks at the qualifications, and I would agree with Member Kennedy's statement that we should provide every person who has applied to the full board with the recommendation that qualified or not qualified, and then if there's an issue, the whole board can tackle that issue, and there's nothing being done at an ad hoc committee level that won't be reviewed entirely by the board. I just think we should own the whole process. I think we really should. Giving it to staff, I kind of get this. I do understand the staff wanting to give to staff. It's quicker. It's obviously within their purview. They could do this. I just think we need to control the whole thing. In regards to the elements of the application, I would want, if I were to do this, would be some sort of just letter of intent. I don't really need a writing sample, but I just want a little bit about why you're here. Doesn't have to be more than a few paragraphs. A CV of some sort, resume of some sort, and whatever questions people feel appropriate. You know, I talked a little bit about having a more robust questions, and now I'm kind of questioning myself about that because, frankly, if I have a question, I'm just going to ask the person. So, you know, maybe think a few simpler questions, and then allowing individual board members to ask whatever questions they feel pertinent and desirable in public view for, you know, other board members to discuss and the community members to see and hear. So I think they'd be more likely to witness responses from board members than they would to be trolling on the internet looking for some 20-page questionnaire that was filled out. But those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Member Bell.
Well, I agree with Member Terry on the committee. I do think it would be a little more streamlined if we I think if we're looking at a short timeline like tomorrow, so this is sort of a proposal, like listening to everybody that I'm thinking right now, if we were to submit the additional questions that we have, so that there were like 10 questions that people would write an answer to, and they would submit it to the board office with their CV and their letter of intent. So they'd have a letter of intent, a CV, and a series of 10 questions that we would need to come up with that they would answer. So if we could all get our questions, like what questions we think might be good, to staff tomorrow, I'm wondering, Superintendent, could 10 questions be put together from the information that we've submitted so that we could have 10 kind of questions that capture what the board members want to know? You know, but because I think it's really important to answer questions, as Member Cunha would say, sort of robust questions more so than just these basic ones. Because not that you're looking at trying to get somebody that you're testing them, but I do think it indicates a commitment level, and it indicates a thought process, and I think that's very helpful when looking at. It gives us some background before we interview. Some people interview very well. Some people interview very poorly. And so it gives us another level of criteria to look at and for you all to vote on. So that would be my suggestion, that maybe if we're looking at tomorrow, we all submit our questions to the superintendent by tomorrow. And then someone, maybe Ross, you know, when our writer can put this together, like 10 questions that encapsulate what the board members have put forward. And then it gets sent out to all of us. We take a look at it, and then it could actually go up on the web by next week. So that kind of speeds things up. And then when people submit, you give them a deadline, and then either I'm not in favor of the committee, but have the committee or have somebody review them. But the only reason I'm not in favor of committee, because it's been my experience that they're never transparent and you never get the info. So I just prefer it come to the whole board, and then we all get a chance to look at it, or council takes a look at it, make sure that the people meet the basic qualifications, and then it's brought forward from there to the board. So that would be my proposal. I could put it in the form of a motion.
Thank you. We're still in
No, we're still in conference.
So we have more lights that are being lit. So thank you for your comments. I'm trying to write down some of the basic ideas and main themes. Member Terry.
I was just going to say, and I don't know if I'm echoing Member Cunha by saying this, but so I think we agree from what he was saying. I think we shouldn't add more questions. In the statements, we can have the candidates, they have the ability to address what issues and things that they have, but in the interview process, individual board members can ask specific subjects and issues and things like that. I don't think we need to make this more complicated than it has to be. Allow them to submit. If they're qualified, then they'll get an interview. And then between them submitting and reading them, the board can come up with additional questions that they may want to ask to each of them. I think there's a couple of issues. First off is if we start submitting a bunch of questions to the superintendent, who's deciding which ones are in and which ones are out by tomorrow? I don't think we have a way to do that, and I don't think it's appropriate to let the superintendent decide how that would work. I think leaving it as open as we possibly can, which I think the format of these questions are fine as a precursor, and then as the board decides, and like I said, I probably won't be one of the ones at the interview even by that time, but this gives a basic outline. Candidates can submit more information than this. They can address other issues if they wish. They can submit a statement, a purpose, or whatever else if they'd like to do that. But I think, if we were to put things in there around, governance or priority schools or, any of those types of things, I think it starts to muddle the process. And it also starts to, depending on how we frame our questions, it starts to, that's what I'm looking for. We can run into the problem of politicizing this before we've even started it. And so I think leaving it very, very simple, take the framework that we have here, and then as the board decides how these interviews are going to go, and are we going to ask the exact same questions, or are board members just going to be allowed to pepper the candidates as much as they want around questions? I think that all can be developed. But I think to try to do this in 16 hours, because we're going to need this up and available by 5 o'clock tomorrow, I just don't see a way where we can properly adjust what we have in front of us right now. And I'd also like to have a specific vote on the committee or having council do it, because I'm pretty adamant about that. But if I lose, I lose, and we can move on. But specifically, I like to vote on that. But I would recommend that we do not add additional questions at this time.
Thank you. And Vice President Wu.
Thank you, President Rodriguez. Having heard my colleagues, I'm willing to withdraw the need for more robust questions, but I do want to share with my colleagues or caution my colleagues that by having more robust questions at the application, we start with a broader level playing field in that we kind of have a sense of what they're already thinking. When we question them from the dais, what we do is we run the risk of not questioning all the candidates with the same questions, because we'll have different thoughts about each candidate. So I just want to throw that out there. But if the consensus is to go with the 5 basic questions we already have, I'm willing to do that. As to the ad hoc committee, it's a very ministerial task that I contemplate. As President Rodriguez noted, are you 18? Do you live in the district? Et cetera. So while I'm okay with an ad hoc committee, if the president would like to select members, that's fine with me. But if you want to move forward and suggest that staff take over that role because it is so ministerial, I'm fine with that as well.
Okay. Just a couple of comments, and then I'll, if there's no other lights that light up after I make my comments, we'll get on to some agreements. As far as council, I don't agree to have council do the vetting of such a small task because it'll be a cost to us as a district, and we want to save money, not spend it. So I'd rather not have either council or staff because it does present a cost to us. And I think board members that sit here are more than capable, if they are so willing to give their time, though, to sit on the committee. That would be excellent. I can agree to like 3, maybe 4 of the questions that are on here to ask, but I would like to have a little bit more of a meatier question or 2 added here, just because I'd rather not take up time in the public to ask questions like, what do you know about our budget? What do you know about our governance? Strategic plan is out there, so I'm not sure if I want to focus on a strategic plan since it's there, and that's something that's learned anyway. And school site plans, it's kind of out there, and there's other resources available for them. But I think one of the key things is budget. We need to have somebody understand that, and our governance system. And we need to have that person have at least some basic understanding of that. So let me see here, what else? And posting applications, I agree with that. And about the 5, I think I hear agreements on the 5, or at least from a couple of people, on the 5 basic elements on initial screening of the interest applications that come in. And the other thing is I just want to caution everyone that regardless of who the board president is, this is the board process, and the board president, board members should be involved in it. And so when December comes along, and it can't be soon enough for me, then we elect somebody new to our board president, and that person should be given the same respect as any other board president that sits up here. And that the process then would transfer into that person's hands, and then they would be responsible for ensuring that the timeliness of everything is being agendized, because that's really what the board president does. They're not here to be picking and choosing who is going to be here or there. They take all the information in and do what they need to do with it, and agendize it. That's all there is to that role. So let's just get to something where we can agree on. As far as the, let's go with the vetting criteria for whoever's going to be screening out the applications. Do we have agreement with just the 5 basic questions that have been pointed out by council? The 18 years of age, citizen of the state, resident in trustee area 1, registered voter, and not legally disqualified from holding a civil office. Vice President Cunha.
If I could just make a suggestion, given Member Terry's comments, maybe we can go to action, and I can call to specific question the committee. Okay. And then we could have that vote. Is that okay with everyone? Sure.
You want to move from conference to action now and then get into some of these agreements? Okay. So we are moving from conference to action with a first by Vice President Cunha and a support from Member Kennedy. And all in favor? Aye. And opposed? And abstentions. So everyone is in agreement. We're now in action, and we'll take things one by one. So let's first just look at the criteria of what I just outlined. So do I get some agreements, and then can we get somebody to make a motion on that?
I will move to form an ad hoc committee that would only look at the statutory requirements for the position and would forward on every single applicant's name to the full board and whether they met that criteria.
Okay.
Yes, we will. Thank you. Okay, so let me see if I got this correct. We have first by Vice President Cunha, and then Member Terry supports this. No, Member Kennedy, sorry. NAD. Okay, so we have a motion to form an ad hoc committee that will only review the applications that come in for.
Point of order.
Yes.
We are at this point going to use
Thank you very much. You are absolutely right. We had consensus informally, so let's just go ahead and take that agreement first. So
I'll make a motion that we don't have an election, but this is an appointment process.
Second.
okay, I have a tie on the second. Who wants to second that? Okay. Excuse me, I'm just trying to write this so that we have it all down. So I have a motion by Member Bell, supported by Member Kennedy, for an appointment rather than an election to fill the vacancy for Trustee Area 1 seat. And I will, do we want to do a roll call on this? Okay. So I will then put it out for a vote. All in favor of this, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And abstentions. So the ayes have it. So that one has passed. Now I will take the other motion on the table to form an ad hoc committee by board members. Do we have an amount? How many board members?
People have
No.
two.
Two's fine.
2 members.
Okay. So we have an amendment, and it's agreed by both Vice President Cuneo and Member Kennedy to form an ad hoc committee of 2 board members only, to do the following: to review the applications that come in to fill the vacancy for Board Member Bell's Trustee Area Number 1 for the statutory requirements, and to forward all names to the board after the screening process has been completed, and whether or not they met those requirements. So I guess we want to do a roll call on this, Member Terry? Okay, so we will do a member roll call, Superintendent.
Member Arroyo. Member Bell.
No.
Vice President Cuneo.
Yes.
Member Kennedy. President Rodriguez.
Aye.
Member Terry.
No.
Vice President Wu. Student Member Yi. The ayes have it. There are 4 votes.
Thank you. Okay, now the next item that we have is.
I want to kind of offer a.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, no,
Go ahead,
I just want to
see
offer some comments based on Member Cuneo's comments. That my biggest concern was somehow emailing tonight and somebody else other than this board figuring out what this questionnaire looks like. So if there are a couple of specific additions right now, I would be very open to putting a couple more things in here today, and we know what this looks like, so that staff or the superintendent are not put in the position of doing that. So if we can find that consensus tonight, I'm open to that suggestion, even though I was saying that I don't want to add to this, specifically because I don't want it to be done tomorrow.
I think I can agree with you, Member Terry, and I got Member Bell over here.
And I think that's a great idea. I do think there needs to be something about the governance process, and I do think there needs to be something about the strategic direction of the district and about the budget process. And I don't have a crystal clear idea of what each of those questions is, but those are the topics. I would say those 3 topics at a minimum should be covered. And the one thing I just wanted to definitely reiterate is that when we have this process of interviewing, we need to ask the same questions consistently of each candidate. And I don't think there should be shooting off other questions at them. So if they have answered this on paper, and then we have a series of questions that we're asking in the verbal interview, and we don't veer off those questions, everybody has the same opportunity to answer, and their subjectivity would be minimized. And I think that is absolutely critical. And when I saw this process done before, that was actually how it was done. There were much more robust questions. There were about 10, 15 questions. They were very in-depth. They had to be answered on paper, and then they had to be explained verbally during the interview. So that person had a time to make a presentation and then to answer questions. But they were the same questions, so that it's a consistent approach. Nobody's getting an easier hand dealt to them. And I think that really guards us, but it also really ensures that we absolutely get the best candidate. So I would say those three areas. So I would make a motion that the, yeah.
I was just going to make a suggestion. I think I thought we need to do a couple things. Number one, we need to get the timeline in order, and number two, we need to take a broader look at what we want in the application packet.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to suggest that we take a vote on a letter of intent, a CV, resume,
Okay.
and answering the questions, and then we could have the discussion on the questions, if that's okay. Because I don't know how people feel if they want.
Okay, well then I would make a motion that we have a letter of intent, a CV resume, and a series of questions that goes up on the web and is available to anybody who wants to apply for the seat.
Okay. I was just going to take each one of those items
I think
one
they
by
could all
one
go
before you
together.
guys started talking about questions. So let's see if we can package this all up like this. So we have a motion by Bell, supported by Terry. Two.
You want me to restate it?
Yes.
The motion I made is that we accept a letter of intent, a CV, resume, and written answers to the questions that will be decided upon momentarily as a application for the board seat for trustee area 1.
Could you include references as it's stated in the letter as well?
No. I would say those three things, you can do or maybe if you want to add references, I guess add 3 references.
The references are stated.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yes, along with this, whatever was in the,
So
those are already on the list, though. So those questions, we're not on the questions, though, right now. So going back to the motion, it's for the CV resume, the letter of intent, and the answer to the questions, which most likely encompasses what's already written there in the original questions, but some additional ones as well. And that it would be put up on the web and also made public through the paper so that anyone who wanted to apply for the position had the opportunity to apply for the appointment to trustee area 1. And I have a second.
Can I just put a little bit more clarity on this and make sure that we're doing this as stated? Is we are moving to do a letter of intent, a CV, resume, written statements, except the references that are referenced to in the letter. Also, directing our superintendent and staff to make public the announcement for an appointment to the board through a public notice to all media sources, not just the paper. With the deadline, according to our timeline, with the deadline of November 14th at 5 o'clock p.m. So we'll take care of all that stuff first, since you made that motion, and then we'll go back and we'll have to adopt a timeline for this as well. So we have a member, Bell, supported by Terry, to do a letter of intent, a CV, resume, written statements, along with the references, made available to all public media sources through a public announcement, and with the deadline of November 15th by 5 o'clock p.m. So all in favor? And opposed? And abstentions. So we have that approved. Now, can we go back and approve the timeline? There is a draft timeline for the appointment process. And it is, the pages are not numbered, but it's in our packet. Starts off with November 1st, which we are doing now.
Move
And
to approve the timeline as printed.
thank you.
Second.
Thank you very much. So we have timeline from Member Terry. And again, the second was again?
Val.
And we have Vice President Wu approve the timeline, or second the approval of the timeline. And I have a question by Superintendent Raymond.
President Rodriguez, I just wanted to point out that I believe in, as you're drafting this motion, you've set a deadline of November 15 at 5 p.m., but but that is the board meeting day, so I think you may want to go November 14th.
I'm sorry, I said November 15th?
Yeah.
I meant to, I have it written down as November 14th, so I correct that to November 14th. Do we have to revote on it?
The timeline that I thought you just adopted is the timeline for the deadline of the applications on the 14th.
Yes.
That would allow your ad hoc committee, when you get to that point, to actually meet on the 14th and then report to the board on the 15th, if that's how you want to proceed.
Yes.
So that's as set forth in the timeline.
As set forth
As
in
the
timeline.
motioner, that was, I'm, like I said, my motion is to approve as drafted.
Drafted.
Right, which states the 14th.
So we're all with the intent that those applications are submitted by the deadline of November 14th at 5 o'clock. I have Member Terry, your light is on, and then I have Member Kennedy's.
I had my light on to talk about the questions when we get to them.
Okay. Member Terry.
I'll leave it on, though.
Kennedy. Okay.
This is just a technical question. So if this ad hoc committee is going to determine this on the 14th, on the evening of the 14th, what does that entail? I mean, this ad hoc committee going to take the word for it as an example that the applicant is a registered member in the district? I mean, we got to check with the county registrar's office to do that stuff, and we can't do that after 5 o'clock on a Wednesday night.
No, that's true. That's why the letter represents that they are qualified. And they could say they are, but you would have to verify that. So the initial screening is you're taking their word for it. But then you're going to have to vet it, because if someone, for instance, if a person has a felony, that is a public record.
Right. But there's no way that we're going to have that information by that meeting. I just want to make that clear. So it even more makes this kind of an exercise in, just a ministerial thing.
It's really an initial screening process.
It's really not.
Well, as much as you can. Because
Well, I would just assume that there's going to be more tasks. The ad hoc is going to be created by the next board meeting when we approve it. Or actually, no, it's going to be created now.
I think now.
Yeah,
yes.
now. We'll have to select 2 board members and get that approved here at this meeting. And then they're going to have tasks that they're going to have to be completed before the December 6th meeting, when we have people come forward to the board in an open setting for their interviews. So then I would hope that they would get their voter reg checked out and their background. And that's still going to be a task that will be given to the ad hoc committee. So we've got a motion on the table right now by Member Terry, supported by Vice President Wu, to approve the timeline as stated in the packet. So all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? And abstentions. So the ayes have it. So let's go back to the ad hoc committee, 2 board members. Given that this is going to be a very quick time frame and there might be a lot of work to do, especially on that November 14th, who's got the availability the evening of November 14th? Let's just go from there. Yes. Member Terry. I have Member Kennedy. It looks like Member Kennedy and Member Kennedy and Cuneo are the two volunteers. So, as the board president, I'll put forth the nomination of members Kennedy and Vice President Cuneo to serve as the ad hoc committee members.
I'd move that. Oh, you're doing that. Okay.
So I've got a second from Vice President Wu. And so all in favor?
Aye.
And all opposed? And abstentions. So the committee is Kennedy and Cuneo. Okay, now we're going to go on to the questions.
Are you okay with attachment 3, the proposed notice?
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead and move it.
I'd like to move attachment 3 as our proposed notice, as our notice for publication.
I've got a first by Vice President Cuneo, supported by Member Terry, to approve attachment 3 as our proposed notice, provided that we fill in the blanks as appropriate.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? And abstentions. So we've got that part. I want to go to now the other part of posting the applications on the website. Yeah, and I just looking at that notice, I just remembered that we had some interest on posting all the completed applications on the website. So we've got to approve that as well. Do we have a motion?
Move.
Okay, Vice President Wu, and a second by Kennedy, to direct the superintendent and staff to post all completed applications on the district website. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? And abstentions, and the ayes have it. So now let's go to the questions. And let's just take Member Terry first.
So the suggestion, or at least what I was hearing from some of the board members, was maybe a question is something like, please share your thoughts on our governance policy. Please share your thoughts on the district's strategic plan. But then there was a suggestion of talking about your experience in budgeting. And while I believe, as one of the finance people, I guess, on this board and the former budget chair, I think that's a value as a board member. I don't know if that's necessarily something that needs to be addressed in an application like this. My experience in finance and my experience as finance chairs of nonprofits and other things like that didn't really prepare me for the type of funding mechanisms and things that are here. So to think that a member of the public, that a qualification like that is really something that needs to be vetted out in this process, I don't see it nearly as key to this position as them commenting about the direction of the districts and things like that. So I would prefer not to have a question around budgeting or finance or expertise or in that field, because maybe they've never had that experience, but they have a lot of other experience in education, other things like that, and I just don't think. I don't know. I just don't see that fitting in the same way as a question around governance. But I would suggest, as far as wording, very open-ended. Share your thoughts on the board's governance model and your familiarity with it, and then another one on share your thoughts on the strategic plan of the school district, and leave them very, very simple like that. So I don't know if anybody has additional comments, but again, I would prefer not to have one around the budget.
Just let me clarify, is that one of the people who put that out there wasn't asking for their expertise in budget or budgeting. It was simply asking, what do you know about the school district's budget? What the cuts that have been made, the pending cuts, the looming cuts that are upon us. So just that kind of basic type of question about what do you know about this school district's budget and the decisions that you have to make as a board member, not your expertise, because I don't think anybody up here is fully an expert on school district type budgets. Certainly not even me with a degree in finance who, operates in that world currently. Would I even say I'm an expert in a school district budget? So I think that would be a very unfair question to ask anybody.
So would the suggestion? So I'm trying. Yeah, I'm trying. So I'm trying to fit in so that I feel comfortable with it too. So a question worded something like, "Please share your thoughts on budget decisions that the board has made in the past, and where you see the future of the financial stability of the district." Something along those lines. Well, yeah.
What do you think the district's budget priorities?
I think that's a great one. Not even saying the district. What are your budget priorities for the district? Like, that's as simple as that. I would be fine with something like that. That's fine.
How does the rest of the board feel about that one? So we've got one question. What are let's take this one first. What are your budget priorities?
And then specifically, I want to make sure that my other suggestions aren't missed here. Share your thoughts on the board governance model that's in place in the district, and then share your thoughts on the district strategic plan.
Just a friendly amendment there to, could we say share your thoughts and understanding of the school districts?
I wouldn't want to add that word.
No?
No.
Could we add another word similar to the word understanding?
No.
I'm
I'm
comprehension
question. I'm being very specific for a reason in my suggestion of this, is that saying the understanding is somehow suggesting that if you haven't been following this school district for the last 5 years, that somehow you're lacking in your ability to serve on this board. I think learning it and commenting on it, we're going to get a really good idea about whether or not they understand it. But saying, tell me how and why you know it, I don't see the value in that. What I want to hear are their thoughts about keeping it, getting rid of it, changing it, what's wrong with it, what's right about it. But we're going to get the comprehension of these issues based on their comments, saying, tell us what you think of it and your understanding of it. We're going to get the same thing.
I can. My thought was just on a similar vein that that I think that if you want to do something, you should do your homework around it.
And if they have if the applicants have an intelligent answer about it, you're going to get an idea of their understanding of it without saying, tell us what your understanding is of it. I mean, that's why you share your thoughts about this policy.
Can I go back to your first question? Could we change the word "are"? So instead of saying "what are your budget priorities," since they're not on the board, why don't we ask what would be your budget priorities for the district?
Sure.
Okay. And then I have Vice President Wu.
Thank you, President Rodriguez. Let me offer something, Member Terry. I like the simplicity of the discussion on governance and the other. And let me just throw out that I think that if we keep the budget question simple and open-ended like that, it would encourage the applicant to let us know their thoughts. Mm-hmm. And so rather than have that more elaborate question regarding budgets, let me suggest that share your thoughts with us about the district's budget.
Fair enough.
I think that's
and they stay with the
three.
Same model of the other two that we're
exactly.
Adding. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Great suggestion.
And no more questions beyond those, hopefully.
That are already there.
These are in addition to the ones that are already there. So I would move with those three additions and the stated attachment. I would move those for approval.
Hold on just a second. I didn't get your third. So I've got one is share your thoughts about the district's budget. And then number 2 is share your thoughts on the board's governance model of the district.
Share your thoughts on the district's strategic plan. And I think with those, we will get a very good idea of their understanding of those topics
And
as well.
could I make a recommendation to remove question 1?
Hang on, now I got to go back.
I think it would be covered in questions 2 and 5.
Hang on. Which number are you asking? 1?
Yeah, attachment 6, and then it would be remove question 1.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that one. Yeah,
Okay.
I will accept the amendment. So striking 1, adding the 3 questions that we just said, I move for approval.
Before we vote on that, what is wrong with 1? I like it.
It's redundant because it's going to be covered in questions 2 and 5 anyway.
What experience do you
not
have in education or
necessarily.
training? I mean,
I do too. I think it's incredibly specific.
But then anybody can run for the board, not that they're specific, that they have this specific knowledge and background in K through 12 schools. Anybody can. So, I want to leave it open for the opportunity for those people who have that education and experience to do it in number 5. What experience, education, or training, or we could put even volunteer work that qualifies you to be appointed. And then that would cover some of the elements in the number 1.
do we want to vote just on striking question 1 first?
Okay.
I'll withdraw my motion and I will make a motion to strike question 1.
Okay. And I will support that. Okay. So I have a motion on the table by Member Terry to strike question 1 of the questions on attachment 6, and it's seconded by President Rodriguez. Let's do a roll call on that, Superintendent.
Member Arroyo. Member Bell.
No.
Vice President Cuneo. Member Kennedy. President Rodriguez.
Aye.
Member Terry.
Aye.
Vice President Wu.
Aye.
Student Member Yi. There are 4 votes for yes.
So with that amendment, or with that deletion being made, I'd like to move attachment 6 with the additional 3 questions.
Okay, we got the same as before. So we have 3 questions plus 2, 3, 4, and 5 of attachment 6. Motion by Terry, supported by Vice President Wu. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions? And the ayes have it.
Okay.
So,
We got something for the website.
Council,
That's a point you want me to ask?
have we covered everything that we need to cover?
Well, I would like to just cover some maybe minutia.
Okay.
The letter of application I thought was like a letter of intent. It's an application. But if you want to call it a letter of intent, I certainly can change that. This is attachment 5. And
When I made the motion, I meant it to be in concert with what was presented by staff.
Oh,
so
okay.
whatever you want to call it is fine.
And we might, in response to Board Member Kennedy's question, I put at the end of this letter of application, I certify that the statements made in this letter are true and correct. We could increase it to under penalty of perjury. If you're concerned that, when they say they're a registered voter or they are not, disqualified because of the Constitution, but that's your choice. It's milder the way I say it's certified, but it has no legal significance as we know. But if you say it's under penalty of perjury, that's serious. It's up to you as a board.
He needs a client.
Okay, I need a decision by the board. Fine with the motion that we already passed, we got from Terry? Okay, we're fine with the way it was as written. Any other items that are needing board decision?
No, I think I have it. Attachment 2 is that the ad hoc committee is going to report on all applications, whether they met the criteria or not, and you want all applications on the website.
Yes.
All applications.
All applications.
I think I've got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we've got it. Item 12, business and financial information reports. We are just receiving information. That's 12.1, business and financial report for enrollment and attendance and the purchase orders. Future board meeting dates and locations. We have November 13th at 5:30. It is a closed session item. November 15th at 4:30 and closed session is 6:30 open session. Then November 6th, 4:30 closed session, 6:30 open session. And I believe I'm in concert with the said timeline that we just approved as well. So I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I
second.
I have a first by member Terry and a second by our student board member Yee. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed and abstentions. We are now adjourned. Thank you, board.